Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Magic the Gathering Arena. Today is Monday, May 18th. Still trying to shift back to the old schedule. The old schedule, I guess it was, where I'd be streaming around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, around that time. And instead, we are doing an 11 in the evening. It'll take a while. Also, I guess I didn't play any over the weekend, so there definitely would have been some opportunity to re-roll some of these a little bit more. There's a new quick draft for War of the Spark. There's a store thing, and there's a kind of, if I understand it, real world money tournament that's somewhere here. So we have this artisan thing we'll have to do in a second. It seems like we're going to get forced into that. Let's see. But over here somewhere. Where was it? Premier draft. Historic event. Maybe it's not out yet. Maybe it's coming out, I guess. Yeah, it must just be coming out. They're coming out with like a 20,000 gold entry fee draft that is kind of a play at your own pace draft that would be, I guess, the equivalent of a tournament. Now, my rough understanding, as we'll go into this, of the my rough understanding of how the entire tournaments have been going with Magic is that it was a partnership with a company that they didn't really want to partner with. I think there was major contention and fighting between judges at these tournaments saying, we're employees, you're giving us direct directions, you're giving us direct schedules, which legally would probably point to them being actual employees instead of volunteers, which is what Wizards of the Coast was trying to do. So with this whole pandemic thing happening now, it seems like they might be testing the water to say, hey, let's just get rid of tournaments completely and do it all digitally. Then we don't need judges, we don't need volunteers or employees so much, and we don't need to rent big convention halls and such. I think, as there is in a lot of areas, there's a probably higher than 0% of people that were acting as judges that shouldn't have been acting as judges, either because they were criminals for one reason or another, or just bad personalities. And I think there's been some drama around that too, but I don't want to get so deep down that well personally to even hear the stories. But so yeah, that probably has been a thorn in the side of Wizards of the Coast also. Magic Arena really could at least solve a lot of Wizards of the Coast's problems, but it won't solve their main issues of them just being inherently greedy and not delivering as good of a product as they should. See. Number of creatures in your graveyard. Okay. So they'll kill something later, but we're gonna have to get a lot of things in the graveyard, I guess. So, yeah, I've been playing the first of the Nonary games, 999. It is way more of a visual novel than an Escape the Room game. While it is kind of like a Jigsaw trap movie, like, or a Saw movie. It doesn't really hit the mark on that. because it's a Japanese game and the Japanese aren't allowed to show like dismemberment and don't want to show a lot of gore. So like I'm nearly done with my first playthrough of this, and in the course of it I've seen one person was blown up and I saw blood on the walls, and then another person was killed with an axe way later in the game, and you see his fully intact bloody dead body on the ground lying in a puddle of blood, and that's it. Whereas if you were watching a Saw movie from the West, you would have seen limbs chopped off, fingers, and I guess fingers being chopped off in particular would be unacceptable, because people would see it as a reference to like the Yakuza. I don't think the Yakuza or TV or the Zero ratings board would be interested in that. 999 was also a Nintendo DS game, so it probably was censored by Nintendo, or at least pre-censored because they knew it was going to be on the Nintendo platform. So it's just not really that horrific or gory. And then it runs into another problem of it being oddly a romance game more than you would have thought it would have been. Like there definitely is at least one romantic interest with the main character. Unfortunately, that one romantic interest is a conspiracy theorist, basically, and so the first couple of conversations I had with her were incredibly frustrating and just made me lose any kind of interest in her as a character. Some of the other characters, probably based on the paths I chose, have said very little or revealed very little. And then there's like one character that seems to be overly focused on, both in positive ways and negative ways, in that she seems to be very smart, some kind of programmer or scientist. She seems to have a lot of skills, but she's wearing a like belly dancing costume that's very revealing on skin, which is in no way in comparison to any of the other people, and they just don't mention it at all until halfway through the game. It's like I was wondering if perhaps the characters in the game when they were kidnapped were dressed in different outfits, and they were all wearing something weird and they just hadn't mentioned it. But no, apparently not. This was her choice, a raw feminism. Like, women should be allowed to wear whatever they want, and men too. Everyone should be allowed to wear whatever everyone would want. I personally would love to see a society where people just said, if I want to walk around naked, I can walk around naked, and nudism was a valid option in society. But it's not true, and it's not what reality is now. So I also can't really blame people for slightly ogling or mentioning when somebody is inappropriately dressed, and she definitely would, I think, fall under that category. But then they also call her whole old hag, which I think is a lot of localization and translation from Japanese, which she gets mad about. But she's not drawn as being old. In fact, the person who called her an old hag most recently looks older and uglier than she does by far. And they have a male character where they could certainly have called him old man to try and balance that out in a couple places, and they didn't. And yeah, I've seen those tropes. I've seen these things done in anime before, but it's unbalanced. It's unbalanced for sure. The writing is rough. The writing in the game is also weird because it seems half voice acted in English and half not voice acted in English, which makes me think the original game had no voice acting, and they remastered it and put in some voice acting, but not all voice acting, which definitely, if I was going to try and cover any other visual novel games, voice acting is absolutely a must. There's just way too much text, and I'm pretty much skipping fairly quickly through anything that isn't voice acted, and sometimes I'm accidentally hitting the button and skipping through the parts that are voice acted. How many do we have in here? Let's see. Two creatures. So this would be -2. So I wouldn't want to use that yet. Sacrifice a creature, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, then return another creature card from the graveyard to your hand. This could escape with +2/+2. If I have enough mana, but I'd need 6 mana to do it. Do any of these have reach? No, so why am I not attacking with these two? So, yeah, I'm going through it, and then once I'm done with the first playthrough, I'll think about, I'll look at the rewind options, and the fast forward options, and I think we'll probably try and turn the Japanese audio on, not the Japanese text, of course, but if we can get the Japanese audio on, we can try and get a closer to the experience that the original Japanese players would have had with 999. It definitely does feel like a bit of a rough sell, a very niche product, and I still am not getting really satisfied for a game where you really just play like you're in a Jigsaw death trap. Because yeah, there's just more things to do. Like more games and more things to emulate. I think it probably 999 is proof that despite the fact that Japanese people often have horror and gory tales they want to tell in anime and manga, there just, I don't think, is enough of a market of that for it to make the transition to video games too much. You get your Biohazard, your Resident Evil games, sure, from a big company like Capcom, but you don't get a lot more. And Western game developers certainly throw zombies into a lot of games, but are they really trying to make that game horrific, or are they just using zombies as a easy enemy? Half the time it's just an easy enemy. So, yeah. Maybe the second game takes that note and changes things around quite a bit. I would hope that if I can power through to the second game this Halloween month. I don't know if I can, frankly, because I'm doing an hour and 30-minute episodes, and it's still taking forever. But maybe the second game takes that note and is more horrific. The thing that's really tricky is that the trailers, the screenshots, everything really do seem to have a lot more violence in them than what actually happens in the game. But then the puzzles are super simple, so at that point I don't know where the real solution would be, because I'm hoping that this would be 4, but it says 5, so whatever. see, what do we want to get rid of? We'll just escape those three. And we've got a couple of flying creatures. And then what does this do? Opponent sacrifices a non-Goron creature. Interesting. Yeah, I am definitely going to be lost as trying to find a Saw movie equivalent game. Feels like somebody should make something there, but probably a Western game developer. Oh, I would say more than a Japanese game developer. The Japanese visual novel idea being thrown in there doesn't add anything. The anime art style and the characters doesn't add anything that's welcome. There's definitely a reason why none of the Saw movies have really had a romance subplot that mattered. Let's see, what do we want to do? So that's on my hand. And I guess I can tap some cards. Yeah, the problem here is you really need to know what the strategy is for this deck, and I don't have a clue what it really is other than it seems to be putting things in the graveyard. Each creature in your graveyard. So this would do 3 damage, I guess. That seems like an incredibly low amount of damage. So I guess you're supposed to go tit for tat, back and forth until you have 20 damage, effectively. Let's see. On the other hand, if I was to think about it, can I play this? Can I really play this? If I think about other horror movies, they're usually so linear that they don't make good sense as far as video games are concerned. Only the Saw movies feel like a video game, and that's why I think they have a slight chance that you could potentially make a video game like a Saw movie. There's plenty of action movies, and like certainly GoldenEye is a great example of a game that was an action movie and got turned into a video game that was very popular for its time. But you could only really take a generic template or rough idea from something like a lot of the horror movies, like in the monster movies, for instance, King Kong, the Thing, the Blob, all those could be monsters in a game, but I don't think they really fall down to the category of Probably should just have attacked here. They don't really fall down to the category of being something worthwhile. They would turn into a game. In a funny way, you could probably take a drama movie where the characters are fighting against each other or just kind of hate each other and turn that into a fighting game fairly easy. In fact, you could probably take any characters from iconic movies and turn them into a fighting game fairly easy. So if you were going to make something like a Friday the 13th game instead of an asynchronous hide and seek game, maybe you are better just, you know, having a fighting game. And, you know, the killer from the Friday the 13th series is just the final boss you have to fight, and before that it's just characters from the whole movie series. Particularly in a long-running series like that, that would work fairly well. And you could certainly put a lot of references to those movies. Plus, you don't really have to overthink it at that point. Still trying to do a little bit more damage. And apparently I'm going to lose this guy. Okay, well, since it's late, we probably will want to exile 4 cards. Let's exile 4 land cards then, since land cards don't matter. Let's see. Sacrifice a creature, return a creature from your graveyard to your battlefield. Why can I not do this now? I don't understand why I wouldn't be able to use that when I was seemingly able to use it before. Seems like the tap cost here is more than top 2 cards. Alright, well, I'm gonna sacrifice this, submit this, I guess, and then what I want is the creature. Apparently no other creatures are available, so let's just take this big guy. And we'll take the flying guy too. And we'll take Evolving Wilds to put this on the field. Put this on the field. I kind of think I know what I was supposed to do, and I just played that card too quickly. So I don't know if I can actually win here or not. Well, regardless, like I said, it's late and I don't want to stream too late, even if I am probably going to just get into recording and stay up all in the middle of the night, trying to finish 999. Okay. None of these guys have reach, so we should just attack with that. And at a certain point, we will just go all out. And if we have 6 that could be blocked, which would basically mean they can block everything on the first try with 1. But they might double up on some characters to kill one of my bigger guys. And I'm still a little under the lever, under the weather. I don't know if there's a phrase there I'm thinking of, that, or if I'm just in my hazy mind trying to make up a new phrase. Under the thumb, yeah, I think I'm merging under the lever and under the weather and under the thumb all together as one phrase. Well, they decided I won, so another one of these artisan things done, and that's all I cared to do. Like, I have absolutely no interest in doing any more of these, but for safety's sake, let's play Zero the Hero. One game, one quick game, and that way we'll just know that we experienced it. More and more we're gonna be in the video game news scenario where there just is no video game news at all. I think this week might be a whole new level of that. I think I probably fell asleep listening to the Beastcast last week and the Bombcast and didn't get any bits of information from them, and there really isn't anything new to talk about even from my other news sources. The biggest story this entire week is that Denuvo released its new anti-cheat software, which is from what I hear, kernel level software, at least it claims to be. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually isn't. That is just has a lot of access to your system to make sure you're not cheating, which in science terms, computer science terms, kernel level is bad, but there is such a thing as below kernel level too, because it is totally possible to have some kind of virus, spyware, or just modification, man-in-the-middle equipment program that happens either before Windows operating system starts to boot up at all. That would be below the Windows kernel, or it happens in the microcode of the CPU in general. So it's happening at a level that even the software itself cannot see or interact with. So there are even deeper threats that could exist if you're just really intent on cheating at a game or doing something else nefarious. I think the biggest problem with Denuvo anti-cheat coming out in its seemingly first product of Doom Eternal is the fact that Doom Eternal didn't initially launch with that software, so it's being snuck in backdoor. It's required even if you're playing single player. They do say that it only activates when you launch the game, then it deactivates when you unlaunch to exit the game, which is questionable as far as what they mean by activate in that case. Because certainly something has to be running or available to be run before the game launches. But yeah, had it been there day one, had it not been labeled as de nouveau, if it was just a new company name named NHE, it's kind of silly that de nouveau thinks their name isn't garbage. Honestly, I don't even know if their name is good as far as the major publishing companies, because that's the real client for de nouveau, is the publishers, the game developers. But I would assume that they aren't very happy with the name de nouveau, at least, either. So yeah, I would definitely say that they should have tried to rebrand, if not change their entire company's name. Straight up just say, hey, our new name for this software is D Anti-Cheat, or Maximo Anti-Cheat, just anything like that. Interesting. We'll try that. Interesting that you can just kind of scry this guy up and up and up and do a massive hit like that. I get why this deck is called Zero the Hero. It's all about buffing. So this actually makes me feel like there's some hope where I can build a red-white deck. I'll mention briefly, a couple of people have put some nasty comments on my channel, and I've approved them. That I'm gonna continue to try to be a free speech advocate, and as such I'm gonna continue to try and allow these people to have their say. As long as they don't say something that is like completely factually inaccurate or untrue, or just straight up is attacking in a really gratuitous, harassing way. I don't want to go down that route. I don't want to be a wimp. Like, I'm a big boy, I can take it. At least that's the hope. I think in the past I may have overreacted on a couple of responses. And every time I do that, after I cool down for a day or two, I regret it. If so, there may have been a couple comments I've deleted, blocked, people like that. But yeah, somebody put out a comment that I ramble on, and it took me 30 minutes to say what could have been said in 10. That's actually what YouTube wants. So, and this person clearly watched all the way to the end, get enough to be upset, and they were upset enough to put a comment, which also is what YouTube wants. So you actually can be quite successful. It's not my intent to be successful on YouTube by irritating people to the point where they will yell at me in the comments, but heck, at this point I'll take any success I can get. It seems like security and things at YouTube are pretty lax right now. Like, a lot of ads are getting through that are for like dating sites and of an adult nature in the ads. Or particularly, I'm getting a lot of ads because I don't have any custom ads turned on. I'm getting a lot of ads that are around personal hygiene shavers, and it's just happening over and over again. And there's oddly no way to report an ad, at least if you have the regular ads enabled, if you don't have custom ads enabled. And so there's oddly no way to really block an ad. So yeah, they're just there. But yeah, everything does look like it is not being really looked at it so much. Security for YouTube seems to have been slightly laxer, and it's now recommended, and I guess it had always been recommended, to just do a security checkup. Make sure you have two-factor authentication on. Make sure you don't have any third-party apps that have access to your YouTube and Google account. Just do a straight cleanup. Maybe even disable TubeBuddy. It's probably not TubeBuddy that has a security hole, but you could probably live without TubeBuddy for a while too. The upload flow is only slightly improved these days with TubeBuddy. At least last time I tried to upload anything, it felt that way. Like, I really do think I probably only use 2 or 3 of their features. They are now down to the point where this ad is just permanent. They don't have anything else to advertise on Magic. Interesting. Alright. Standard ranked. Let's see if we can get up to platinum. Probably not. But yeah. There was this thing going on YouTube where seemingly accounts are getting hacked, and then bots are running them, and they're commenting wannabe friends on a lot of videos. Oddly, I didn't get that comment on my channel, which is probably to say that my channel is so kind of de-algorithmed slash almost like the equivalent of shadow banned, but not intentional. It's just so de-emphasized that even bots can't find it when I live stream. But I definitely saw it on someone else's video. But I haven't seen it on a lot of people's videos, because what would happen is most people's videos that I watch, I don't look at their comments, and even if they did have a wannabe friends mention on their comments, most videos I watch are from big enough creators that they would have hundreds or at least 20 or 30 comments in their videos that would put that one comment down at the bottom. The way YouTube has moved the comments box around and changed things kind of affects that too. There definitely have been bot comments on my channel, lots and lots of them. Great job, keep it up. Positive bots. I don't say, can't say I hate the positive bots that say great job, keep it up. And some of those may not actually be bots. They may just be people trying to be encouraging, which would be appreciated. But then you see people that just constantly say want to collab, and it's like, no, I'm not gonna collab with anybody. Probably would help my channel somewhat. I saw an interesting video kind of talking about how YouTube has set up a system that's very tricky, in the sense that the new YouTube studio in particular is constantly giving you these little comments, feedbacks, kind of just like nagging you or pushing you to do more work on it more, while also hiding the fact that actually a lot of the YouTube studio is acting as if they were your boss. Of course, YouTube does not want to admit that effectively, if not legally, effectively, YouTube content creators are the employees of YouTube. They don't want to admit that, certainly, but it definitely is the case, because YouTube is constantly telling people to work a consistent schedule. That means they're trying to tell you to the hours you work. They're constantly telling you that if you want to succeed, you have to work a certain amount. That's more evidence to an employee. They're telling you what you can and can't do. Certainly that's they're having like direct control of your creation process quite a bit. The ultimate success in a new economy that we may have to move to would be for the government to say, no, YouTube, you need to pay all these people. These are employees. They're making content. I don't know how big of a success that even really would be, because at that point YouTube would just eliminate the ability for the vast majority of people that upload content to upload content. And he'd say, alright, if these are all our employees, we're going to fire all but the top 100 content creators and just ruin YouTube as it is. But yeah, people who are creative, even slightly creative, even badly creative like me, I'll just put myself in that category, need to be paid in some way. And the best way to do that would be government grants for the arts, basically. Or just universal basic income, so then that stops being an issue. But yeah, right now YouTube has enjoyed, I would say, over a decade of being able to grossly profit over the efforts of a lot of naive people, possibly including myself, who've made content for years and years. An interesting point to that, I think, is OMG Chad, who was a Minecrafter who looked like he was on the fast track to being like one of the top Minecrafters. He was there with Seth Bling, friends with Seth Bling eventually, and some of the other big Minecrafters, that a lot of which don't actually even make Minecraft videos anymore. And particularly in OMG Chad's case, he was held up and helped by, I would say, at least two slightly influential California producer type people when working with Twit and when working with Brian Brushwood. Although it seems like Brian Brushwood really doesn't have anything to do with him anymore, and Twit fired him, so they definitely don't have anything to do with him. I don't think that had much to do with OMG Chad, anything too offensive about him. His voice is a little annoying, and that might have just killed his possibility of ever being a major personality. Is that his personality is just a little dry and his voice is a little dry, and OMG Chad really just boiled down to running his OMG Minecraft channel into doing very basic tutorials and tips every time there's like a new snapshot, and that's kind of it. If he was doing Let's Plays, it was all on Twitch, and that I never saw any of that because I don't follow Twitch. And the big thing there is he just recently got 1 million subscribers, which, congratulations, that's a big number. It's probably way more subscribers than I'll ever get, even 100 years from now, but he took 7 years to get there. And it really goes to show that if you were very lucky and at YouTube on day one, you could get 1 million subscribers very early. And I think getting 1 million subscribers very early is even more important than just getting 1 million subscribers. But if you started even 2 or 3 years after YouTube started, at that point it was just too late. I don't think there are going to be any other major success stories, or very many at least, from YouTube, because it's just too hard to fight through all the garbage, through all the competition. You can't, even now with the new rules that they set up, you can't even really just make a few pennies and be happy for that. Well, I would have been happy to make even $100 a month, with potentially having the option to stop making new content or greatly reduce the amount of new content I make and still make a little bit of about $100 a month. That would be fine. But yeah, it's just not gonna happen. It's not likely to happen. And that's why it's important as a content creator, and I try to do this as much as I can, to jump into things like Library and BitChute and any of these other services that often have the risk of immediately failing or immediately turning into what Vote.co turned into in a lot of ways, where Vote.co wanted to be a free speech alternative to Reddit, but because of that, it, without a lot of filtering and a lot of work, turned into a just forum flooded with porn ads, flooded with spyware ads, flooded with huge amounts of racism and just toxicity. And I hate to use the word toxicity, but yeah. But yeah, it pretty much is going to have to go that direction. A lot of people are going to have to get tired of having CNN and NBC, MSNBC shoved in your face on YouTube, which they admit that they know that's less popular, and they're still going to shove it in their face, in people's faces. I would say the YouTube algorithm also is showing that it's not being as effective as it should be. I'm definitely on a daily basis getting recommended like the same things over and over and over again, and it's like, well, I've scrolled past this video 30 times, why aren't you getting the message that I don't have any interest in watching this video, and why aren't you recommending something different? Yeah, the algorithm seems to only really pull up maybe 1,000 to 5,000 videos that it will recommend for you, and it doesn't seem to change those 5,000 videos in a relatively quick amount of time. So once you've seen those, once you want something new, which I am gluttonous, is to say, as far as video content goes. So I am definitely a prime example of somebody who would just want more and more content and want to watch more and more things of the things I want to watch. I would wants to cycle out the things that I haven't watched. But it doesn't really work that way, unfortunately. And that's why subscriptions are better than the recommendations, and always will be, because there's literally nothing you can do to give me new content using an algorithm that's as good as me just subscribing to people who are going to make new content. Alright, well, I've been rambling on, and I was gonna try and rush through here. So we have a game here with Asian characters. It looks like it's probably a low effort beat 'em up or RPG. Actually, it kind of looks like it's kind of hard to tell what it is, actually. I guess it's an RPG, but it looks pretty bad. English is not supported, it's free, and it's Japanese. It looks like a Toho project game, if I was to guess. But yeah, doesn't look good. We're still kind of fairly consistently getting games that are Toho games. And it's really surprising. They probably have made a bunch of those always, and I've just not been paying enough attention. Okay. What do we want to do? Block that. And then should probably block that and then sacrifice that. TechRaptor has an article here. The Epic Game Store expands third-party store partnerships. So they've also added partial refunds. So now fantastical.com and Greenman Gaming and Gimba Digital, I haven't heard of that one, have joined Humble Bundle, who have support for keyless purchases last year with major third-party stores. What this effectively means is, I don't know how much of a partnership that really is. It just means if you buy these games, you may now get an Epic, the game associated to your Epic account instead of getting a Steam key. All of this, though, for me, and I think for a lot of PC gamers, doesn't make any sense at all. It really is this, at best, half-butted idea that you're going to convince a lot of people to migrate their giant Steam accounts to a new storefront that can in no way migrate 100% of the games. And you're increasing your risk that the Epic Store shuts down. Particularly if you look at the most recent incident of Epic giving in to the Google Play Store. That is something to consider, for sure. So they killed the thing they wanted to kill. Now he's gonna get a bunch of health. So now it's a matter of, can I kill the two things he wants to kill? If I get Bola Citadel, I could still win this fairly easily, but I could probably fairly easily still win this, because now I've wrecked his hand, so now it is just a race as far as how quickly till I get the Bola Citadel versus how quickly does he get a card that he can play. Yeah, I'm still not hot on the Epic Game Store. I don't know what the Epic Game Store itself would have to do to convince me. I think it would mostly be, yep, he saw that he would lose and conceded, and I'm happy for that. They would just have to have a lot of better partnerships with everybody, and I think there probably is a long list of quiet people that just don't want to do business with Epic. Probably everybody who makes only Unity games doesn't want to do business with Epic. Anybody who's done business before with Epic and didn't like the terms or how they were treated probably doesn't want to do business with Epic. And I think that quiet list is a lot longer than people would think, and that will be the gaping hole as far as the difference between what a potential library of games on Steam will be compared to Epic. And there certainly is a quiet list of people that don't want to do business on Steam, but I would say that list is not of a list of many of important games. It's a lot of good old games, a lot of things that barely run on modern PCs and aren't really relevant, or it's a lot of console only games like Nintendo. And if Epic, I suppose, got Nintendo games, then that would be a huge upset. But almost certainly Nintendo would try to do their own storefront. That would be my guess. Speaking of Nintendo, TechRaptor has an article. The wonderful 101 Remastered pulls another classic from the Wii U graveyard. It'd be interesting to kind of see all the games that came out for the Wii U. Because Zombie U, for instance, was one of those games that was designed specifically for the Wii U, and then they had to port it to PC, and they barely did a good job on that. Wii U Wikipedia. Software. Games. List of Wii U games on Wikipedia. So 007 Legends. Actually, this list is probably pretty long, so I'm just gonna scroll through it and mention if anything here looks interesting. There's a lot of games here that I'm definitely seeing I've never heard of, and look like they are probably digital download games of no value or worth mentioning. There's an Alice in Wonderland game that was apparently unreleased. Amazing Spider-Man 2 game that was apparently unreleased. There was a, let's see, what is the column I'm looking at? Oh, unreleased in Japan. Alright, so there's the games that came out in the West. There's actually quite a lot of games here listed as unreleased in Japan, so it seems like the Wii U itself wasn't even that popular in Japan. Angry Video Game Nerd Adventure. Another World 20th Anniversary. See, the problem here, Axiom Verge was released on it. The problem with this is that a lot of these unrecognizable names might have been good games and nobody would have seen them. There was a Barbie game, 2 Barbie games. There was Batman Arkham City, Arkham Origins, Arkham Origins Blackgate. Bayonetta 1 and 2 were re-released. Those are like obviously on other platforms though, so there's no loss there. There's a couple of Ben 10 games. The Binding of Isaac came out on the Wii U. One of the Binding of Isaac games versions. Book of Unwritten Tales 2, but not 1. A Bridge Constructor game. Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Cars 3 game. The Double Fine game The Cave came out on the Wii U. A lot of these definitely were ports. Child of Light came out on the Wii U. These were just clearly ports, though. Oddly, no Castlevania games by the looks of it, unless I missed it. Costume Quest 2 was released, but not Costume Quest 1. Darksiders 2, but not Yes, also Darksiders 1 War Mastered Edition was released. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the THQ Nordic games got re-released on the Wii U. The Deus Ex Human Revolution Director's Cut. Yeah, I've decided I need to go through the effort of trying to get rid of my Xbox 360, and there's a half thought there to just buy a cheap Xbox One and then try and put all the games that I have in that tray and see if they can upgrade the 360 versions to an Xbox One version. I think that kind of works, but I am not sure, and I don't know if that's really worth the effort at the time. It's probably easier just to give away / trade in all of the things and get the few pennies you'll get on some of those games and move on, because the main goal in that thought is to just be done with it, just get rid of it and have it not sitting on a shelf anymore. Several Disney games on the Wii U. Epic Mickey 2, for instance. Several Dragon Quest games. A lot of these games are black, on Wikipedia to say that they are not even relevant enough to have their own Wikipedia pages. There's an ESPN Sports Connection game. The game The Fall. A lot of these are like small kind of indie games that definitely got ported to PC. If anything, the Wii U probably helped PC gaming a little bit. Maybe because it pushed people who would have been big Wii fans. If you were a first-time console owner with the Wii and you didn't want to get a Wii U, some small percentage there would have had to go to PC instead of moving over to an Xbox or a PlayStation. There's a Fist of the North Star game that came out on the Wii U. But yeah, you definitely aren't running into 50 games per letter. You're running into maybe about 20 games per letter of the alphabet, which probably puts you into a total collection of 400 to 500 games, with the vast majority of these being small games that were ported to PC already, or games that aren't relevant at all. Guacamelee was on the Wii U. Guitar Hero Live was on it. There's a Hello Kitty game. There's a Hot Wheels game. Weirdly, in a lot of these cases, you would have thought there would have been 2 or 3 or more Hello Kitty games or Hot Wheels games or Barbie games. I think there were 2 Barbie games. It'll Do came out on the Wii U. And then there's a lot of games that are just called things like Jackpot 777. So, a lot of Just Dance games. They're Just Dance 4, Just Dance 2014 through Just Dance 2019. So there's like 8 Just Dance games released on the Wii U. Jotun Valhalla Edition. Can we tap anybody? Wasn't paying enough attention to that game. Also, I had to mulligan twice. I saw a YouTube video talking about how the companions are kind of broken just in their concept, because it gives you this extra card no matter what if you meet the companion conditions. And the idea of just having a new extra card is just so powerful that people don't really realize how game breaking that actually is. Not being an expert in Magic, of course, I can't really confirm any of that, but it does seem slightly reasonable that that extra card draw by having a companion is changing the game a lot, and it is going to get to the point where you just have to play a companion no matter what. See, looking at the Lego games, there was a re-release of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, and Breath of the Wild was released on the Wii U. So you had 3 Zelda games, Legend of Zelda games. Mulligan once, and that's it. I just don't think this deck probably has enough mana. I think if I were to take one thing out and give myself one more mana, I probably would be in a slightly better position. Because there's a lot of games I'm playing here where I'm just low on mana, and it kind of stinks. If I could find some black cycling cards, that might be helpful also. But yeah, according to the video I saw, almost everybody in the most recent tournament who was played a companion and won. So there were just like no non-companion decks that could even compete. And I am starting to see a large number of people playing companion, so it might just be the point where we need to see if we can find a black card that is a companion. Yeah, as far as Lego games on the Wii U, there's quite a lot of them, so that's not super surprising. There's Lego games on almost every platform, but not a lot of games with just L in the name, oddly. I scrolled through the L's very quickly. Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, Mario Kart 8, Mario Party 10, Mario Tennis, Mario and Donkey Tripping Stars, and that's it. So about 5 games with Mario as the first word, but some of those also not really individual Mario games, instead being like Mario Tennis is a group game, Mario Party is a group game. Mass Effect 3 was released on the Wii U, none of the previous games. There is clearly a pattern you see here where games that were on the Wii were backward compatible, so a significant amount of game developers did not bother to remaster or re-release things for the Wii U, which probably hurt its sales quite a bit. They had Minecraft Wii U Edition, which I doubt is supported anymore. Several Monster Hunter games. Quite a lot of Monster Hunter games. In fact, Monster Hunter might be the most supported game series on the Wii U. Several games that start so My Exotic Farm, My First Songs. I don't know if those are all from the same company. Seems like maybe it's 2 or 3 companies that did that. NBA 2K13 was the only NBA game for the Wii U. There was an NES Remix 1 and 2, and then an NES Remix pack. New Super Luigi U, New Super Mario Bros. U. I wonder what New Super Luigi U actually was. That's a little funny that hasn't been ported to the Switch. Nintendo Land. Let's see. A lot of these games, like, I don't even know what I would really be looking for here that would be a system seller, other than that I'm clearly not seeing anything that would be a system seller for the Wii U. But kind of obvious that it had a lot more games than you would think, because of a lot of them being small, I think download games only. There's a Peanuts movie game, probably to line up with the relaunch of the launch of the one of the newer Peanuts movies. Pikmin 3, but not Pikmin 1 or 2. A game just called Pinball and the Pinball Arcade. Pokemon would be a big seller here. Pokemon Rumble U was the only Pokemon game on the Wii U. Like, a lot of these games don't have U at the end of their name also. So you can kind of quickly tell that a lot of these were multi-platform games, not specific for the Wii U, so they wouldn't be system sellers anyways. QUBE Director's Cut was on the Wii U, but not the sequel. There's a game called Red Riding Hood. Resident Evil Revelations was apparently the only Resident Evil game in the series. Romance of the Three Kingdoms 12 was the only Romance of the Three Kingdoms game. There was a couple Scribblenauts games. There was several Shantae games. Looks like 3 of them. Pirate's Curse, Half Genie Hero, and Risky's Revenge Director's Cut. Yeah, and probably getting this information and sticking in my head doesn't really help. There were several Skylanders games. Skylanders went very deep into the Wii U and then failed miserably. Because Toys to Life and just physical toys in general, not really selling. And probably never will. Splatoon was on the Wii U. That would be like the one system seller I've seen, and we're already down to S's. There was a Star Fox Guard and a Star Fox Zero, and Star Fox Guard is apparently some tower defense game that some of these games probably should just be on the Nintendo eShop to see if they can make a few more pennies off of them. Sell them, put them on sale very cheaply, 69 cents basically. Although it would be potentially possible, I suppose, for Nintendo on their storefront to have some things that were only purchasable by Nintendo points instead of real world transactions, so that you would have to buy like 5,000 Nintendo points or Nintendo credits, whatever they're called, instead of spending 69 cents and then 30 cents plus 10% of that going to a credit card processor. Super Mario 3D World was on the Wii U. Super Mario Maker was on the 3D U, the Wii U. So those two would have been system sellers. Smash Brothers for the Wii U, Super Smash Brothers. That could have been a system seller. We're getting to the T's. It would be interesting to see how many Telltale games came out for the Wii U, if any. Apparently no Telltale games, or nothing with Telltale as the first name, at least. But The Walking Dead would be the other major Telltale game for them that have. There's several Transformers games. Nope, no Walking Dead, no Telltale games at all. And that takes me to the U's, which then quickly takes me to the V's. Oh, The Walking Dead is under W. So there is a Walking Dead Survival Instinct game from Activision, not from Telltale. They came out. There's one Warriors Orochi 3 Hyper game. Watch Dogs. Ubisoft was clearly deep into trying to port things to the Wii U. A lot of Ubisoft games. We Fit You, We Party You. The Wonderful 101 was the game that triggered all of this. Xenoblade Chronicles X. a yokai watch, a Yoshi's Woolly World. And Zumba Fitness World is the last one. So yeah, that was a bit of a waste of time. Yeah, that list was very long, but very, very much full of not system sellers, not games worth porting or bringing back. So the idea that one of the possibly half dozen good games is getting ported and brought from the Wii U graveyard is a little disingenuous. I don't think you call the Wii U graveyard the Wii U graveyard. I think you call it the Wii U cesspit or something like that, because this is not a place where the honored dead are placed. This is a place where uncared for debtors are placed. It's more of a debtor's field, I guess, would be the better equivalent. Skylanders probably put a decent amount of work into their games, so if they could figure out a way to make their games work without the toys, that would be really great. It says, according to this, there are currently 772 games on the list, and I can't find 6 of them worth mentioning. Which also is a good point to mention as far as going back and covering and trying to play retro games or have a collection of retro games, is that you could easily have the thousands and thousands of games that have been designed over, even to this point, they're still making games that they can run on original NES hardware. But the relevancy of having all those games and the mess of trying to sort through all those games is not worth it. The hassle of having giant hard drives that you, as you get to more modern games, could be up into 1, 2, 3 terabytes of hard drive space needed, particularly if you're trying to get complete collections of every language and every version of every game. It's just not realistic to have that completionist mentality when trying to cover retro, old, abandonware games. You're just better off taking your sweet time and simply then just having the games that are good. Like for the NES collection in particular, there's probably less than 50 games that aren't made by Nintendo that are worth going back and playing. So if you could just sort by games that were first party Nintendo games and then go through a quick list of everything else that you might want to add, you'll probably end up with less than 200 games that are actually worth playing, depending on the genres of games you like. And I would say the list is slightly smaller for a Super NES. And Nintendo 64 emulation isn't great, so that might be a factor as to what you can really cover and what you can really play. And we've won without really even paying much attention. This guy clearly didn't know what Bola Citadel did. Slowly making progress. Sometimes a step forward, sometimes a step back. It would be interesting. Let's see if we can do this. Alpha Blood version 1.0. We want a black companion. Apparently companions are not available. Creature. Black creatures that have been collected from Ikra, I guess, is the best way we can do that. And these aren't black. These are black. So the question would be, is there something here that we own that could be a companion, or is that just not something we've collected, or is that something that just doesn't exist? I guess we have to look here. Starting Turk's deck contains any number of cards with even converted card mana costs. So set that as a companion. What would we have to lose? Murder. We would have to lose that, which is pretty good. We'd have to lose this and this, which really just would ruin everything. So yeah, that doesn't work as a companion. Probably could just type in the word companion. Also, odd converted costs. See what that would lose. Blight Beetle in that would be too bad. But then Vindictive Vampire and Bolas Citadel and Taste of Death. So that doesn't work either. Did we have anything else as an option? Let's see. Well, this wouldn't be black. Anything here? Or anything here? No. So if I want to play companion, I have to either lose one strategy or I have to lose the other strategy. And I probably hurt both strategies in the effort. So companion doesn't work for black, which probably just means I shouldn't be playing black anymore. And I desperately need to hurry up, so here we go. We have an Open Critic article here. Microsoft reveals massive Minecraft stats. Also, Mojang changed their name to Mojang Studio. So let's see. Surpassed 100 million 4 years ago as far as units sold. Let's see. Mojang Studios was bought for 2.5 billion in 2014. The game enjoyed 25% increase in new players in April, with a massive 40% increase in multiplayer activity. Yeah, I don't think you really even want to play Minecraft if you're not either playing a Java version to do custom maps in single player, and I think mostly that would be content creators and lonely people like me, or you're playing online with your friends. And with the whole schooling at home situation that's going on around the world, I imagine there was a lot of kids that instead of going out and playing, took some of that extra time that they all of a sudden had to play Minecraft. And I would be much happier if I were a parent of a kid to have them play Minecraft over Fortnite and flossing constantly. So yeah, I would definitely encourage kids to play Minecraft. It still works. I think you're still probably better off playing Java Edition, but if all the kids' friends are playing Bedrock Edition, then play Bedrock. If all the kids are playing a Switch version, then play the Switch version. I wouldn't be surprised if the Switch versions in particular are selling fairly well. Moving on, OpenCritic has an article here. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 soundtrack has been revealed. This is a big deal for people who love the soundtrack. And I'm not a big fan of music, but I think I recognize a lot of these punk rock, pop bands. At least some of them. And if I heard these songs, I probably would recognize a lot of them. Now, being a YouTube video game critic, if I am going to play Skate 1 and 2, which I kind of think would be a cool idea, we definitely are going to have to mute the audio one way or the other. Like, none of those musics are going to not get content ID'd. No way that happens. I mean, that would be amazing if it somehow it did happen that way, but it won't. And then so apparently this is the list of songs that won't be in the game but were in the original game, which seems like it's 5 or 6 songs. Not for somebody who doesn't care about video game soundtracks, particularly in this case when the music isn't even custom made music. I don't see a big deal on the missing 5 or 6 songs, but people that do care, I certainly understand why they would be upset. It does go to show that there is more long-term life to own everything you create, and that has been a talking point that people have pushed. Certainly, is just always own everything you create, never work for somebody else, never make other people money if you can avoid it, or make other people money but make yourself money first might be a better way to say that. So like the Bayonetta soundtrack, I would say I bet the vast majority of the songs in Bayonetta are custom songs that they could never lose. So if there was a remaster of Bayonetta that couldn't play the Fly Me to the Moon song, couldn't get the license to that, you would lose a great scene certainly, but you probably wouldn't lose all the music throughout the entirety of the game. Whereas games like Let's Dance and such or Guitar Hero are highly volatile and lose any resellability as soon as those licenses fall apart and people don't want to spend the time and the effort to renegotiate for music license. And it seems like nobody is willing or capable of negotiating for lifetime licenses or in perpetuity licenses on music. Gamma Sutra has a blog here that was called Video Game Deep Cuts, The Ghost of id's Pro Skater. So apparently id Software had a Pro Skater game. Let's see. Seems like they're also linking to some other games. Like, here's a game called Dolores that was a free prototype using Ron Gilbert's new adventure game engine, and found art from Point and Clicker Thimbleweed Park. So it seems like they jumped to a different topic in this article, and they're talking about several different things linking to several different articles. Interesting. It's not what I would assume something labeled as a deep cut to be just a listicle of other articles. That seems slightly deceptive. Next, we have a game on Steam called Boston Allnomics, which seems to have a robot creation theme. I don't know if this is some kind of programming, visual programming element. It looks like it is. A robot will follow the instructions that you drag and drop. Yep. there's a problem certainly with, oops, I should have paid more attention there. Almost lost an important character. There's a problem with things gamifying or trying to be like a programming language, but then getting so far away from what actual programming language is, the big boys, the things you actually would be taught in school, even in early like middle school times. One of the prime examples of that is, I think it's the MIT created the programming language Scratch. It's what the Lego programming language is based off of, and I think Apple also embraced it too. The problem with it is it's so drag and drop and so visual that you just wouldn't. It sets this expectation that is unrealistic, in the sense that I could see a lot of kids learning to quote unquote program in Scratch through dragging and dropping and not really understanding why things work the way they work. And then the next year they would go into like a Python programming or C++ programming or even an HTML JavaScript programming class, and then be told, okay, here's a text editor, you're going to learn to type all this text, you're going to have to write 300 lines of code to do a simple task, and people just like dropping out in the first week and going, this isn't the programming I learned. The program I learned was all easy drag and drop. And I don't know how much of things like Scratch actually established the basics. And we could look here just as a reference. So for instance, here you have this robot walking forward, and then you drag what would be a command. Let's see if we can see it. Like, so this would be like, if you're up, go down. If you're down, go up. If you pick up a box. But these are the equivalent of an if command and a function call, which would be a very big function call to program this robot to bend down and stand up. It might be that they're not actually if commands and tests at all. They might just always tell the robot to go up even if he's already standing up, and that might cause crashes too, and that would be slightly realistic. But there's literally no text here, and there's no ideas of like how syntax would work, how spelling is important, how style guides are important, how long and frustrating and complicated programming could be. You don't want to just frustrate kids and new people in the programming language and go, look, this is long and complicated and frustrating. But you should be honest about it. You should go, yeah, if you get upset, if you're ADD and you get upset after failing the first time and go cry in a corner, you're not suited to be a programmer. Like, programmers get abused and work 16-hour days, and they cry on their own time in the toilet like real adults. But yeah, you need almost an insane level of attention to detail and obsession to be a programmer, and oversimplifying things I just can't agree with. Like, you should get the basics. That's why I think Minecraft and their little redstone logic teaches a lot of the Boolean comparison logic nicely, because you don't get that for free. It is complicated. It's still visual, and it really doesn't equate easily to anything text-wise. But you actually have to put in the work. You actually have to look up tutorials. You actually have to know what you're doing. It's not something that is just straightforward. And it has caused a lot of creativity where I think perhaps Scratch is so there is one solution and only one solution, and it's a super simplified solution. I think perhaps there's a problem with the way Scratch and languages like that are taught. I don't think they really open up for checks of understanding, and there are more a focus around the way they're taught. A lot is just regurgitation type education where you're just supposed to memorize it. Apparently my network is down. But yeah, I got into a bit of a rant there. Boston Nomics, AI Nomics is $6.99, bunch of languages, and it's not making it to the fall list. We'll leave this running for a while. Maybe nobody is seeing this video because my internet is really messed up, but I'm just going to keep assuming you can, and let's just go through these games while it's crashed. That gives me a great opportunity. So here we have a game on Steam called Get Over Blood, which looks like a game where you can fly, but you also kind of have to fling yourself up using strands of blood as you're playing as this vampire lady. This looks a little low effort, but I kind of have to applaud the different idea there. It would be interesting. This kind of feels like a demo. $6.99. A bunch of languages. I'll put it on the fall list, but I'm being generous there. I was thinking how Blood Rain, or a game like Blood Rain, would really benefit for some relaunch, remaster, reboot. The Year of the Vampire seems to be setting itself up for next year, assuming we have a year of video games at all next year. But a lot of those video games will probably not be that good, and probably won't be games that are action based in general. So there's, I think, more room for some vampire heroes. I mean, half the action games could have the main character be a vampire and it wouldn't change too much. And we're always trying to find games that would stop being focused around just military people that can run and gun. And it's been a little too sci-fi lately. If you think about like Anthem and Destiny and even Mass Effect, sci-fi has been the big thing for a few years now, and they tried to make pirates work and it didn't work. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called The Velvetist Prototype, which is a demo, and it looks really blurry, certainly, but it kind of looks like it's an attempt at a GTA style game with some like mafia type elements. I guess if the visuals improved quite a bit here, there might be a game here. I don't know if it really would be worth playing now. I feel like I probably need to convince myself to play the GTA games first, or at least the most recent one, or the Saints Row games, or Mafia remaster. Anyways, this is free to play, and it's English and Czech, which I don't think we've gotten to the point where we have a category in my mind of cheap Czech games, but I would assume that there's been very few Czech games I've seen come out, and I would assume they probably don't have a lot of funding, so a lot of their games will probably not be as polished as you'd want to see, and that really is a rather ambitious game from a Czech company. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Roll Control, which looks like it's just a marble physics game that maybe has some unique balance board controls. Yeah, that looks dangerous and the kind of thing I would never risk doing for fear of falling and hitting my head. $4.49, but then you probably need to build your own controller, apparently. So, yeah, you're going to hurt yourself building your own little skateboard thing. It's English with a third-party EULA. And I'll say no to that. This was, I suppose, an important story to mention. Gamer Sutra has this article. Ubisoft is suing Google and Apple for selling a Rainbow Six Siege quote carbon copy. The carbon copy that they're accusing of being a carbon copy is called Area F2. I don't know why Apple and Google Ubisoft thinks Apple and Google are going to be liable at all for this. I would imagine any company that lists a game on either of those storefronts indemnifies Apple and Google for any lawsuits like this, and I'm sure there might even be some legal protections for running a storefront to indemnify and protect storefront things. The Chinese company Alibaba clearly is the one to be sued, and they probably are making a complete ripoff. Although, in fairness to AF2, it's not like Rainbow Six Siege games are extremely unique anyways. A lot of those concepts are based on real world events or exaggerations or fictional ideas that have existed for a long time, as far as like those stories. So if it came down to an actual lawsuit, I think Ubisoft would have to spend a lot of money and a lot of time to convince a judge that this is straight up copyright infringement. And it seems like Ubisoft instead is just trying to sue people and scare people as their first step, which I suppose is the appropriate and legal first move, because it's what everybody does. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Gamescom 2020 digital event set for August 27th to the 30th. Kicks off opening night live on August 27th. So, a digital Gamescom event. Now that all of these events are online, there certainly is a alternate reality where I would have gone hardcore into live streaming and commenting over those events and watching them live and trying to make footage out of it. It's not really worth the effort. It really isn't, though. So we'll get the same news from other people reporting things, and there's really just no reason for that. We can't concede, by the way. So I'm either gonna have to crash out, or this is gonna be the last of our games, and I don't think I want this to be the last of our games. So I'm gonna crash out and hope that this works somewhat well, and hope that OBS isn't crashing, because yeah, it did kind of crash earlier. Meanwhile, while that's loading, Gamatsu has an article. Chex Quest HD is now available, a modern multiplayer remake of the classic should be in quotes at that point, 1996 first-person shooter. Like, people are memeing, I think, a lot more on that than they should. Let's get back into a game. Like, I would have a really hard time justifying playing Chex Quest. It is reasonable, I think, to probably own it for relevancy's sake and do like a spotlight on it, but to actually try and play all the way through it seems silly and a waste of time. Gamma Sutra has an article. Disney clamps down on Club Penguin clones following abuse allegations. So apparently, we talked about this, but I kind of flippantly said, well, it seems like they're just protecting their copyright, and that Disney should just allow this Club Penguin clone to be a fan community and stay. But apparently there was some other drama behind this. See, after it was revealed that some players have been using the platform to share explicit and abusive messages. So, yeah, that's a funny spin on it, but I guess that's probably true also. Since Disney isn't running Club Penguin, and these Club Penguin clones will vary wildly as far as the moderation and what's on them. So yeah. Yeah, I saw an article on Reddit yesterday that was kind of shocking, where someone was claiming, and I don't know how much of these stories are true or not, that Pornhub has been fairly bad about taking down revenge porn and underage porn and porn of the filmed actual rapes and such. Which I could be slightly sympathetic that, sure, a lot of the scenes can have actors act very much like they are, like it's real, and that they're going as close to the line as possible while staying within the law to make it feel real and seem real instead of fantasy. But yeah, I kind of had the opposite feeling. I thought Pornhub actually did a better job at that. That Pornhub was the safe place. That anything you would go and see there would be more curated and checked and verified as being, this is all willing participants and this is all legal material. And I don't know if there is any kind of adult website like that that kind of can give you a better guarantee of that with a similar selection to what Pornhub has. But that's the level of shock that I don't know. I don't know what, I've now forgotten why I started talking about that. That's a level of shock that I imagine Disney would have with the Club Penguin stuff too, is that Disney probably would have been fine with the Club Penguin clones and the fan servers had they kept their nose clean, as it were. But it seems like they didn't. And in all reality, Disney should just, to maintain its own brand, have never shut down Club Penguin. It really wouldn't have costed them that much to just have it stay up forever. I don't think it would. Moving on, we have Chex Quest on Steam, and in case you needed to see what it looks like this. It's a like Duke Nukem skin or something like that. It's a skin of a first-person shooter game of the time. I'll put it on the follow. I guess it's free too, so I guess I could just add it to the wish list right now, and probably should add it to my account, make sure I actually own it, but I'll probably not get to a point where I actually play it. But clearly it had some level of relevancy and memorability around that. I wish when you hovered over here you could see how many of these there were without it being so difficult. But I guess it doesn't matter. We'll do this, and we'll do this. And then next turn, we will play Bola Citadel and win, potentially. Czech Raptor has a review for Chex Quest HD, and we'll see how good the game actually is. And I bet it's pretty lowly reviewed, yeah. 5.5. The soul of Doom still burns in Chex Quest HD, but this remake fails in every way to replicate what made the original a cult classic. Positives are satisfying character roster, serviceable shooting, it's free. Cons are brain dead enemies, lame 3D graphics, and it feels free. So yeah, spotlighting a bad game doesn't sound like something that I'd really be very interested in. TechRept has an article here. Kerbal Space Program is getting a free European Space Agency update. Coming in July to PC, consoles later. I felt like they were mostly trying to make a Kerbal Space Program too. And I bet this update is barely just a few missions and skins, and that will be about it. Yeah, and the whole idea of making a Kerbal Space Program 2, I think, kind of falls apart because they kind of fired all the programmers, and so the team that made Kerbal Space Program 1 even slightly work is not working for them anymore. Seriously. I can't do that. This one can't block, so all this one has to do is power himself up, and I've lost. Gametsu has an article here for the Switch. A game called Liberated is launching June 2nd. Looks kind of black and white. It's rated M. And is this kind of more of a adventure game or a visual novel game? It seems to me it looks kind of visual novel-y, with more of a Western way of doing that. It's being labeled as walkabout games. I don't know if that's the developer of the game or if that's a new style of game. New vision of the future of digital comics. So they're saying it's a digital comic. Interesting. Digital comics on the Switch, I don't think would in any way save the comics industry or help the Switch much. TechRaptor has an article here. Monster Sanctuary releases an Underworld update. What's Monster Sanctuary? Though it looks like a kind of poorly animated game. I don't hate the pixel graphics when it's zoomed in that much. So there might be something here. You might have different monsters or animals that help you throughout the game. And interesting. So we click here and go to Monster Sanctuary. It's rated overwhelmingly positive, and it's on my follow list. So if something has brought me back to a game and I look at it again and it follows the rules, then it just is a matter of when it comes out of early access. In this case, as soon as this is out of early access, I'll put this on the wish list. But not a second before, because I'm not about that. I'm not gonna play some early access game and then have to come back and play it a second time when it decides to be finished. Gamatsu has the same article. They call it the Shared Horizon update, but it's clearly the same update. For a Kerbal Space Program. This was a slightly interesting sentence, bit of news. Tencent, the Chinese company that is probably being run by the Chinese government, at least in part, has acquired the System Shock 3 website, which makes it really feel like that System Shock 3 is just more and more less likely to happen. That was a terrible way to say that, but yeah. The idea of System Shock 3 and remaking System Shock 1 at the same time and having both of those release even a few years from each other And also, I think they're remaking System Shock 2 also. So, yeah, it's really feels like they're rudderless and they just don't have an idea of the direction they should be going. The thing they should have been doing is making System Shock 3, releasing that, and then seeing if that has a big enough audience to justify funding remasters of System Shock 1 and 2. Even though that's not the ideal scenario for the players,
what a whiner.
It's the ideal scenario for the game developers. If we want more accurate details, TechRaptor has a brief history of System Shock 3. Apparently it was a troubled development history. It was originally announced back in 2015, so 5 years already. Then Starbreeze picked up the game publishing rights, and then Starbreeze sold the publishing rights to Otherside in February of 2019.
Perish the thought.
Otherside was looking for a publisher and funding partner in 2017, which actually would have been 2 years before they bought the publishing rights.
Struggling? Good.
Let's see, is there any other stories here? Nope. That pretty much is all the trouble that we've seen so far, other than Otherside's Underworld Ascendant performed poorly and probably hurt the chances of System Shock 3 succeeding also. See the problem I think that is getting overlooked a lot here is BioShock was inspired by System Shock. It clearly was. They pretty much admit it. If they don't directly admit it, I think they directly admit it. So the time to hit
not really.
with a remake of System Shock 1 would have been in the time frame between BioShock 2 and BioShock Infinite coming out.
Finally.
And BioShock Infinite was delayed, so there was plenty of time for that to happen. At the very least, after the big success of BioShock 1, that would have been the time to start working on a System Shock 1 remake, and it definitely should have been out by the time BioShock Infinite had been out. So a year after that, you say, hey, we've got System Shock 1 remaster out. And then you try to steal the thunder of the BioShock games. But they did none of that, clearly. It's been many, many years since BioShock Infinite that they even started to think about doing something with System Shock. It really is just a prime example of people just sitting on their intellectual property and doing nothing with them. To the point where if you wanted to make an argument that System Shock 1 is still abandonware, I'd be willing to listen to that argument. That even though it is capable of being purchased on Steam, it's like, yeah, have they really done anything with it? Has any actual creative person made any new content, or would a creative person actually get paid anything more if you buy a copy on Steam? Or if you bought a copy of the original System Shock 1, does all that money just go into the pockets of a bunch of middle managers and CEOs who don't do anything creative at all? And at a certain point, that really just boils down to your own guess and your own assumption. And of course, buying System Shock 1 now might fund the development of the remake or System Shock 3, but they seem to clearly not be able to actually deliver on those, or at least they have yet to prove that they can deliver on either one of those. But they also at some point definitely just needed to flip a coin. They needed to just say, are we going to make a remake of the first game, or are we going to make a third game in the series? Because they really couldn't afford to do both, obviously. Moving on, Gematsu has an article here. Clubhouse Games 51 has been up 51 Worldwide Classics overview trailer. It's apparently a tabletop collection coming out for the Switch. Doesn't look terrible, and it has Mario on it, so this almost feels like this is a Mario Clubhouse game. Yeah, this, I don't think, it might not come out to the West. But yeah, this looks nice. I'd like to know if this is coming out to the West, though. Because that would be the big deal. It says it's coming out for the Switch on June 4th. And having your Switch and being able to learn a lot of these games for particularly young kids is way beneficial. Because it is always nice for a kid to be able to look at a chessboard and know what chess is. Look at a checkerboard and know what checkers is. Just in case your power goes out, just in case your battery's dead on the Switch. They should know the rules to these games. It is a fundamental thing to know when playing video games, because there's so many puzzles, so many ideas, so many gameplay mechanics and concepts that are at least in a small part based on the old tabletop games, that it really doesn't benefit you to lack a general knowledge there. And I would say the general knowledge level of tabletop games is always decreasing anyways. Even in the game I'm playing right now, 999, they talk about a game called Baccarat. I've heard of Baccarat, I've never played it, I don't know the rules to it. And so that whole conversation, I was just confused because they're having to try and explain to me how Baccarat sort of works without going into great enough detail that I would actually be able to play it.
My army will envelop this world, smelly but effective.
Moving on, Gematsu has an article here. Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath Expansion Friendship Trailer. So they have a friendship trailer you can watch. It's pretty much just an advertisement. So new friendships are coming to the full roster. They're really pushing Mortal Kombat 11. Which I would probably argue that they've probably already failed and messed up with Mortal Kombat 11, and they should be holding back some of this content for Mortal Kombat 12. I can see the beginning of the end as far as our tabs go, so if I just push through it, we should be able to get through a lot of this. We need to play one more creature spell and try and get more victories. I feel like I am still probably a little far behind as far as victories, so I probably should find an extra day where I could play Magic. It would be really helpful to have a mobile app, because yeah, there are some days on rare occasions when I'm pulled away from my computer, and it would be helpful to be able to play games in a different location. Next, we have a game on Steam called The Confession, which is tagged as having sexual content, comedy, and funny. Looks like it's an RPG Maker game where you're playing as a Mother Superior who, as far as I understand it in Catholicism, do not take confessions at all. I would assume, and this would be just a guess, that a priest, a male priest, would come in like once a week, even to a nunnery, even to a place like that, and take all the confessions of all the sisters and nuns. So, yeah, it kind of feels like this is probably a Japanese RPG game, or that doesn't understand Catholicism as much as it's just trying to use the imagery of Catholicism for its own purposes, its own whim. Let's see, here it goes. The first part about this is, ever wondered how much of a kinky pervert you are? And it's like, yeah, well, the Catholics will call you that no matter what. So, they're very anti-sex until you're married, and then they're extremely pro-sex after you're married, so that you make more Catholic babies. But yeah, this definitely feels like a troll game. It's English only. It's $1.79, and it probably takes place in this one screen. So it's not even really an RPG Maker game. It's just using that engine, from the looks of it, to make a single scene. It's mostly a text-based game, I imagine, and I bet it's not particularly good. Moving on, we have a game called Steel and Bone, which looks like a VR dungeon crawler. As I am basically playing a visual novel game right now, a text-based game I think really does not work for PC gaming. Something like that, might work better for a mobile game, but even if I am going to cover other visual novels, they're going to have to be pretty heavy in the visuals, or at least trick me into believing that they're pretty heavy in the visuals parts. And there's going to be some music, some audio, some voice acting for the lines of dialogue, so I don't have to read things like that. I'm going to be particularly picky and stringent on the ones that I would be willing to cover versus the ones that I wouldn't be willing to cover. And at best, I still think it's somewhere around the top 3 to the top 10 of visual novels that I'd be willing to cover in general. As for this game, Steel and Bone, it's free, but it looks like garbage. It's English with full audio, allegedly, single player, and doesn't have any VR support. Yeah, it really just looks like an asset flip experimental project. It's an interesting thought, I suppose, as to whether or not you would want kids to see all these terrible asset flip games, like have a collection of them that you show off on Steam to kids that are programmers, and point out, here's the reason why this game won't succeed. Here's the reason why this game is not good enough quality to be on Steam. It would be a very negative, like, framed message, but it's maybe a message that kids would need to hear. Also, like, I kind of wouldn't be surprised if that would be helpful to show this is below the level of quality. Now, on the other hand, instead of being negative, you could be positive, and you could talk about all the good games on Steam, and talk about how long it takes to make those games and how many people it took to make those games, and you balance that out with the few indie games that were made by like one person, and how those are always scaled down and more simplified and easier to make for different reasons. I think getting a real world picture of what games are going to look like and what programs are going to look like is important. Even if you're just teaching a programming class where a lot of those programmers very well will not end up programming games, but will end up programming like other kinds of software. Setting realistic expectations is probably not a bad idea always. Next we have a game on Steam called Mansion. Huge collection of games made by the game industry students at Allman Institute. So apparently these are student projects, and that explains why all these games are so different looking. Interesting. It's an interesting idea, certainly, to make one large collection of games made by students instead of trying to release each game individually. But I kind of think that's a disadvantage to the students. I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the wish list because, you know, I like to shout out students, but it is a disadvantage to the students, because if you're a student and you want to say, hey, I made this game, they put it on Steam to show off that I made this game or I worked on this game. If some potential employer has to go and download a big file and sort through that file and say, well, did you work on all 200 of the games here, or did you just work on the one game that has the cat in it, or the one game that has something different in it? Because it's kind of a big difference there. Alright, I gotta figure out how to win with this. And I'm gonna do this and hope this works. Because this one should get 8. This one will just block that guy, which isn't that helpful. I was hoping that it would kill this guy. I was hoping something like that would block it, or that would block it, or these two would block it. But whatever. Alright. We have hopes here, but I don't think the hopes are going to be right. I think I'm going to be a little short. I think he's going to have like 2 health left. Yeah. So this next turn, if I don't take too much damage, maybe I can play Bola Citadel again and maybe win, but I doubt it. I think I've been outplayed. He's just gonna constantly give himself more health. This is the deck that's just the opposite of my deck. And he got himself up to 10. So I guess if I could get Bola Citadel and 10 things on the field. But he's going to attack with this, which will give him 15 health. Which means I probably lost at that point. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Mythic Dungeons, which looks like it's a slightly too zoomed in platformer / beat 'em up game. It looks very unpolished. It kind of feels like it's an attempt at making a Castlevania game, but it looks like it's playing very slowly, and visually it's just very unpolished. It's early access. It's $8.99. It's got a bunch of languages. If this catches my attention and gets a lot more polished, I don't hate the idea of somebody trying to make a make a Castlevania clone, particularly considering how the creators of Castlevania made a Castlevania clone. But it has to be good, and I think you could even make a small argument that even the creators of Castlevania kind of failed to really fully implement what you would have liked to have seen implemented in a Castlevania game, because there was a lack of polish as much and as much variety in the, what was it called, Bloodstone? I forget the name of the Castlevania clone. Like, it was well received, but people forgot it. I keep adjusting myself into my chair. It's getting just incredibly uncomfortable. If you're noticing that I'm getting louder and then quieter, it's because I'm leaning slightly forward on my microphone. Yeah, we need to wrap this up because this is just killing me. We have a Halloween's Horrors Deluxe Steam Edition, which is a low-effort slot machine game. It actually doesn't look too bad, actually. If you just need a slot machine and are willing to pay $6.99. But then there's a third-party agreement, too, for no reason. Let's go ahead and concede. We've lost. Let's just save ourselves the time. Save ourselves the time and move on to the next game. Wednesday, all things working well, we'll do a quick draft War of the Spark. Next we have a game on Steam called Collection Quest, which looks like a RPG Maker type game. Looks very Nintendo 8-bit graphics. A classic collection meets a true story driven RPG game. Yeah, I don't see anything special here. You would just have to have a, and they're calling themselves Nameless Dev, which is a terrible name to name yourself. If you had major like nostalgia for The Legend of Zelda, the first Zelda game, just play that again. This is English only. It's $2.09. I don't have any faith in this game being good. We have a troll game here, Toilet Paper Crisis Simulator 2020 for 99 cents. Third party EULA English. Obviously that's not a good enough game to put on a fall list. Although there is a way you could take the toilet paper hoarding and put it in a characteristic of a character in the future. If there was a future like Far Cry game or zombie survival game that came out and there was one character that was clearly a parody of the toilet paper hoarders and they just are hoarding toilet paper all over the place, or if there's quests to do that, that'd be fine. Like Borderlands, the next Borderlands game, if it had a quest to hoard toilet paper and collect as much as possible, that'd be fine. Even if you made the whole game have a currency of toilet paper, that's fine. But there needs to be a bigger game, a more traditional gameplay mechanic, and a bigger concept around that than just what is a low effort troll / commentary on the current world events. Next we have a game on Steam called Journey to the Center of a Cell. A lot of ways cells are depicted are kind of inaccurate, I think. This looks slightly interesting, but I don't know how scientifically accurate all of this would be. This kind of feels like this would be like a VR like theme park ride type experience, the educational ride that you might have kids at a museum put on VR headsets and play this. It is free, so the price is right, and it's English only. So if you have any interest in journeying to the center of a cell, I suppose you can do that now. But I would warn you, you get what you pay for, and I guess if you're desperate for more VR content, which I imagine most people are, that would probably be helpful. Let's see. Next we have a game here called Candle Flame in the Wind, which looks like it's probably a Chinese RPG maker type game. 4:3 ratio. And nothing impressive here at all. English is not supported. Free. Price, Chinese only. Yeah. Not anything that I think even the Chinese audience would really want to play. Yeah. It would be interesting if we got believable and legitimate articles that said, no, the Chinese just really love the Famicom NES style games that they've been playing this whole time, and that the average Chinese person doesn't know things like Fortnite or 3D games in general exist, or they know they exist but choose not to play them because they don't like them. That would really go to a long way from accounting for, there's no accounting for taste, to just like a weird preference. But we certainly have seen that in other Asian countries, where like most Western people don't like the anime art style and don't like anime games, and generally a lot of Western players don't like RPGs in general, and RPGs are super popular in Japan, and the anime art style is the de facto art style for most games out of Japan. So there is big cultural differences there. In that case, it's the Western culture and the Japanese cultures have been intermingling for a long time, and they've been influencing each other for a long time, and it still is the case that there are big cultural like differences of preferences. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and attack with this and hope somebody blocks it. Then we do this. He has to sacrifice 3. Next we have a game on Steam, Teleporter World of Gamers Alpha. Another demo, early access game. Looks like it's a bunch of asset flips, frankly, and it looks really bad. Early access requires VR, it's free to play. Third-party account required, and it's English only. I watched someone play Fight Club, and yeah, I didn't realize that the game Fight Club was so much of a kind of strategy game. So it got me interested into potentially playing that, and I probably own that game, so I should just double check that it's either on my wish list or put it higher up on my following list, so I can get around to it in the next year or two, which really goes to show how far back my schedule is. Speaking of my schedule, Snake Pass started airing on my channel, and one of the recordings was scheduled to air at like midnight, which, yeah, that surely didn't help it get any views, I'm sure. But I have considered just doing that for all my videos, just as a way of being lazier and not having to pull down yet another slow time selection bar. Interesting, he let me win there. I'm not sure I was guaranteed a victory, but he seemed to think I was. But then again, he sees his cards and I don't, so I was wrong about seeing it. I don't know what it is. It always seems like there's one red icon for a website that is always before the red icon for the Humble Bundle icon. So it always makes me think that I'm a lot closer to being done than I really am. Yep. And it's really questionable at this point if any of those cards were new. Yeah, like only that card was new. The rest are just going into that secret vault. Another Big Fish Games hidden object game is out called Fright Chasers Thrills, Chills, and Kills Collector's Edition from Big Fish Games as a publisher. $12.59. They're keeping it at the same price. Yep, hidden object games. I really kind of wish that 999, the first nonary game that I'm playing, had more hidden object sections or just more escape the room puzzles. There's actually very little gameplay in it. It's you get maybe a few conversation points, and at least one of my conversation attempts apparently just failed the speech check completely because of, I guess, some other decision I must have made earlier on. And so I was choosing something that felt like I would convince the group to make a decision, and instead of choosing instead of succeeding in that speech check and influencing the group decision, I kind of failed and the group did what they were going to do anyways. I would say that's part of the problem of the way the story is told, that they start off with 9 people, and each of these 9 individual personalities all have different ideas about what they want to do, and they don't just listen to you as a leader or vote you as a leader. That probably would have been the easiest way to solve it, is that in the first 5 minutes they just said, hey, let's just vote. This is the person that's going to be the leader and make all the decisions and play the game. It would have been easy for even the bad guy in the game to say, pick a leader to make your decisions as a requirement, and then the player character gets to make a bunch of decisions. Gets to make all the decisions, of which again there's not very many of them. Moving on, TechRaptor has an interview here called "Sewing a Tapestry of Horror in Ginkgo." Ginkgo is not a game I've heard of. It looks to me like it's one of these Chinese asset flip or Korean asset flip horror games that they are getting better. This is one, it doesn't even look particularly good, but I have seen some games like this that are getting better, and it's on itch.io, so at least they didn't bother to put it on Steam. Yeah, I hate to say it this way, but I kind of appreciate when games companies and game developers kind of know their place and know when their games are marketable as a product to sell on a storefront full of products to sell, versus their games being tech demos or vertical slices or things that should be shown off and appreciated by those who want to appreciate small projects, small experiments, but shouldn't be put in front of people who are unknowing of the state of those kinds of games. Looks like we may have run into another issue with the network. Maybe they fixed it. Gamatsu has that article. Mojang becomes Mojang Studios' new name and logo for Minecraft's 11th birthday. Yeah, okay. It's a little weird to have rounded corners come out of the name title. And I don't think that really means too much because I don't think Microsoft is going to have Mojang Studios on a loose leash, as it were. I think they will always have to support Minecraft. If you're working at Mojang, you're always going to be working on Minecraft. Maybe you'll get some permission to do a side project here and there, but Minecraft will always be the most focused, at least until Minecraft stops making money. At some point in the distant future, maybe Minecraft stops making money and then they have to make some other game, but I don't know if those projects would ever get handed to Mojang. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if the way the Java version of Minecraft was programmed originally was so odd that you've raised up an entire company that is just used to doing programming a little bit wrong compared to somebody who was trained to use something like Unity or Unreal, and so that there's probably a lack of general knowledge and a high specialization in the programmers that work at Mojang that is kind of only unique and useful to fixing and maintaining and supporting Minecraft. I imagine Notch in particular, if he was still working at Mojang, would be a particularly bad programmer who couldn't adapt to using Unreal or Unity. Or you'd have a lot of struggles with it. I wouldn't say he's guaranteed that he couldn't do it. And it is also, I guess, worth mentioning that Mojang did try to make that game Scrolls, and that went nowhere. Moving on, TechCrafter has a article here. Grammar Ninja loves to hold the red pin, which seems like it is a educational game trying to be hidden, and it seems like the game is not even out yet, so at some point it's going to come out on cell phones some point this summer. It might be interesting to try and do some grammar English puzzles and educational game for a minute or two, but I imagine I could at most put an hour into that and then I would be very bored. I don't think there's a long-lasting way to have entertainment with that. Moving on, TechRaptor has the digital edition of Charterstone reviewed, which this looks like a resource management game by the looks of it, if not some kind of conversion of a tabletop game. It looks slightly nicely polished. It's not terrible. I gave it an 8.0. Equal parts complex and chill. Charterstone Digital Edition only lacks by being a little light on storytelling. Pros are complexity that slowly grows over time. Bright and colorful graphics and good user interface, and cross-platform play. The cons are storytelling isn't always present, and there's a steep learning curve at the start. I got one game that was free. They were giving away several games at the beginning of the social lockdown distancing for our Android, and I got one that was like a card-based tabletop game that just didn't really make any sense at all when I first played it. It took me 2 or 3 days to finally figure out how it worked, and then at that point I realized that it was not really complex enough to be an interesting game, and the cell phone version of it really wasn't adding anything other than kind of microtransactions for no reason and a unlock system for no reason to make you play this game thousands and thousands of times that you wouldn't want to play more than twice. Or I definitely didn't want to play it more than twice. So yeah, my point being that it's fairly easy to make a bad tabletop game and then make a digital version of that bad tabletop game. It's a lot harder to make a good, engaging tabletop game. I probably won here. Next we have a game on Steam. It's a bunch of Asian characters and it says I want to be the Yin Yang Orb. This looks like it is a kind of low effort bullet hell platformer / shooter. Looks more like it might be a platformer than even a shooter, because you're just seemingly avoiding the bullets, not actually shooting back. It's $3.39. It's English, Japanese, and Chinese. I would venture to guess that it's probably a low effort Chinese game. Next we have a game on Steam called Shmup Arena, which is, I assume, a shoot 'em up. Although it actually doesn't really look like a shoot 'em up in a lot of these screenshots. It looks more like a top-down twin-stick shooter. And yeah, it looks in no way interesting. It's 99 cents, English and Portuguese Brazilian. This time. TechRaptor has an article here. Oboria tries and succeeds to gross you out. Grossing us out since 2020. This looks like kind of a Diablo dungeon crawler type game. Doesn't look very visually polished. And it seems like you're playing as some kind of insect-like creatures. It's in early access right now, and they say it's not worth even trying, so I kind of would like TechRaptor to adopt a give it a try, don't try it, pre-release icon of some sort, so you can scroll down to the bottom and just get the gist of this stuff without having to potentially read the 3 paragraphs of filler. But yeah, I guess it comes down to does TechRaptor want people to look at the articles and actually read the articles, or does it want them to look at the ads and get the number of page clicks and page views? I imagine they only care about the ads, so summarizing their articles would be more useful, and summarizing their articles would probably be useful anyways because it would have a broader audience appeal. So yeah, I can't really see a downside to the idea of ensuring that there's a easier way to tell whether somebody likes or dislikes a preview of a game. I imagine the people that give them the free copies to the games, though, to write previews wouldn't like it if half of their articles say don't bother to check it out. Yeah, that was a constant issue with video game journalism, and still is that people are constantly being forced to be positive and write articles in a positive way in the previews, and then once they get down to the reviews, that's the point that they can actually rip it to shreds and say, oh no, this game actually stinks. So there's kind of like a dishonesty that editors and advertisements and other things force the journalists to put into their articles, which then opens up video game journalists to being comfortable with being slightly dishonest, which is not what you want in a journalist. You want them to be obsessive about the truth and speak only the truth and the full truth. And yeah, very often you don't get that. Next we have a game on the Steam called Megaland 11, which Looks like it's kind of an asset flip game where you're playing as a robot on Mars. They're saying it's an exploration puzzle game. Explore the science stations and help the bad luck rescuers get out from the forgotten planet in 11 days. I don't really believe that there's a game here, but I'll be generous and put it on the follow list. It's $5.59. English, German, Spain, Spanish, and Russian. That's a slightly odd combination of languages. We'll see. We'll see if it gets some reviews. I've won this game as soon as I can just get one more mana. And I very possibly have won the game regardless. But we'll see. I tell you what, let's stop covering games at this point, since we are approaching 3 hours. Let's cover the news and then cover the games that were left over on Friday. And then we'll kind of have a rolling coverage of games from Wednesday. But at the end, this Friday, we probably will need to catch up a little bit so that there's only 10 games left over the weekend. If my schedule worked out this way, and it just kind of doesn't, it probably would be a lot easier to stream on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday instead of Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But, yeah. That's not going to happen, though. So, here we have a game called Epicure, which looks like a game where you're playing as a cooker, a chef. Seems like you're serving food, basically. Basically doing somebody's job with pixel graphics. It looks very uninteresting. It's early access, it's $4.99, that's too expensive. And it's English only. So, yeah. Still very much against the idea of playing a game that is just doing somebody's job. TechRaptor has an article, we need more mobile mysteries like the Death Mask, which apparently is a mystery game for cell phones. If this is free, I'd be willing to play it, but if it costs money, like most people, am not willing to play a game that costs money, and there is a slight risk that a game like the Death Mask could be ported to Steam, and then I would have played it once already, and that would have kind of stunk, but it's not a big concern really, because I can play a short mobile game a couple of times. At some point in the future, it might get to the point where it's silly to play games that come out on the cell phones if there's a higher chance of all games being ported to PC also. And there certainly are ways to emulate an Android phone and play Android games on PC, but that's not a realistic thing that most gamers would be willing to do. So I don't know why I would make that kind of footage. Like, I don't want to become a mobile game, video game critic, particularly since I would constantly be referencing Destiny Child as the best game I've ever found on the let's do this here and here and here. Yeah. And yeah, just to mention Destiny Child, it's still going, still getting new content, still giving you reason to play. It's working very nicely. It never really gives you enough of a break, but also I'm now getting into the late game point where I think we'll play one more game. The late game point where I'm starting to have almost everything that you possibly can have, and I'm starting to just max out a collection, and at that point the game may go into a bit more of a maintenance mode for me where I'm just maintaining things until the next expansion comes out. And when the next expansion comes out, I'll have enough premium currency to get the 6 copies of the new character that would be introduced easily, and that'll be all I do, is just get that new character, level them up to the max level, and be done with it. But there's still a lot of things to a lot of time. It'd still probably be a year minimum from this point before I got a full collection, and it will only be a full collection as far as it's missing the exclusive ones that were time limited. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Kingdom Hearts Dark Road has been delayed. It's no longer due out this spring. I had not heard anything about a Kingdom Hearts game called Dark Road at all coming out, but it might have been a cell phone game. Yeah, it's labeled as a smartphone game, so that would certainly explain why I hadn't heard anything about it. Let's go ahead and just pass. Gamatsu has an article here. A new Super Lucky's Tale is coming to PS4 and Xbox One. A rebuilt platformer first released for the Switch in January 2019. So this isn't a new game, it's just the game is called New Super Lucky's Tale. And I don't think it was particularly that successful, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not sure if the Super Lucky's Tale series was ever successful. Let's go and attack since we can. Gamma Sutra has an article. Epic rolls out easier refunds, keyless third-party sales into the Epic Games Store. So, yeah. Epic has added a self-service refund feature that gives the player the ability to request refunds through their transaction history for games with less than 2 hours of logged play time purchased within the last 14 days. Which is to say, they are just exactly copying the same policy that Valve and Steam has. And wasn't that, in part, the policy that was irritating people and pushing people away from the Steam storefront into the Epic storefront? So they kind of just undercut their own advantage, because the sales point that they were selling the Epic Store to developers and publishers with was that you would be in control a lot more, and it would be a much more publisher friendly platform than the already, in my opinion, very publisher friendly platform of Valve and Steam. Now that argument is harder to make, because both platforms, and probably most platforms, now have self-service automatic refunds, which there are definitely some publishers out there that don't like that idea. Insomniac Games hosted a Commons Grounds discussion on mental health with guest speaker and licensed therapist Anna Perkel, which is weird. Weird, certainly. I guess this wasn't recorded and streamed anywhere. It was probably an internal discussion for the employees, but it is some, I guess, decent virtue signaling, and I can't really complain about it too much. The thing that would make this backfire is if it turns out that stories come out that Insomniac Games is particularly bad with crunch or a particularly hostile work environment. But I don't think I've heard anything like that, so that would be just a speculative thought, not reality. Meanwhile, Insomniac Games is assumedly working on the next Spider-Man game. One would hope they were doing that at least. And I suppose it would be slightly interesting to see if these Spider-Man games make it to PC versus staying as more PlayStation exclusives. Even if they went multi-platform, that would be slightly interesting. Game & Sutra has an article. Minecraft has sold 200 million copies in 11 years. Which, yeah. So, Minecraft is probably one of the best-selling games, if not the best-selling games ever. That does put a nice region, and I probably need to write this down, as far as how many copies of any game is reasonable. I've, in my mind, thought if you get to 300,000, you're a top-tier good seller in copies, and clearly 100 times that or 1,000 times that is the maximum number of copies that you could sell. Well, not even that much, like, because if it was 300 million, that would be 1,000 times that. So we would have to take 300,000 as the minimum and 200 million as the maximum, and that is the range in which all video games at the moment seem to be able to sell as far as units sold. The calculation gets a lot more complicated if you start asking questions. What about how much money you can make per unit, which would drastically make some games really, really profitable and some games really, really not profitable. I guess profit's probably the wrong word to use there. Gross revenue gaining. So, yeah. That's the range, that's the mindset. So, often the general talk of games sell millions and millions of copies is not accurate, and even if you did sell millions and millions of copies, it's not 100% guaranteed that is still making profit for the company, because if they needed to sell 10 million copies to break even and they only sold 1 million, they would have wasted a lot of money in game development, but a lot of big AAA developers seem to do that. Moving on, here's a Forbes article. A self-paced play differentiates Magic the Gathering Arena's first ever cash prize tournament. The arena opened day 1. Let's see. So maybe this was an invitation only tournament. Maybe that was the case. It says, on May 30th, MTG Arena is hosting its first ever cash tournament. The event will be open to all interested players over the age of 18 in eligible territories, and everyone who enters will have the opportunity to walk away with prizes ranging from in-game currency, bonuses to up to $2,000 in cash. Unfortunately, I suck at Magic, but I will say check out this Forbes article if you're interested, and if you're gonna try and do that. Almost certainly I would lose just 3 losses immediately, and it's 20,000 gold it looks like to enter. It seems at least maybe 20,000 gold every day that the tournament runs also, so that could be very pricey. So that's another thing to consider. So we'll need a little bit more details when it gets closer, and definitely I don't think I'll be participating. I don't have that kind of gold to waste, and I don't have that kind of delusional to think that I could possibly be that good. TechRaptor has an article here. More Assassin's Creed Valhalla details have been revealed. It's way too early, though, to really care about Assassin's Creed Valhalla at all. Like, it's gonna be a long time. And chain creature loses all its abilities. Alright, well, if we do that, how about we do this first? Before he loses his abilities. I'm gonna go ahead and decline that. I need Bola Citadel to win. And I don't think anything else really wins the game for me otherwise. We already talked about that, so we don't need to mention it again. TechRaptor has an article here. The hit registration bug continues to plague Apex Legends. So apparently there was a hit registration bug. And I don't play Apex Legends, so of course I don't know anything about it. TechRaptor has an article here. Final Fantasy XIV Moogle Treasure Trove event kicks off with patch 5.3's delay. So, apparently people are still playing Final Fantasy XIV, which I believe is the online one. I don't even want to dare to look at what time it is. It's probably, yeah, we're approaching 2 in the morning. Yeah, and I was going to stay up all night anyways. That's been my schedule. But it's certainly not a good schedule by any means. Just gonna let this guy hit me with everything he's got. Gamatsu has an article, Metal Max Xeno Reborn details, new character growth system. I don't recall a game called Metal Max Xeno. This kind of looks interesting as a character art. This is the one where you were, yeah, now I remember it. It's the one where you're driving the tanks, and it looked a little rough, and it still looks a little rough. See, and the biggest problem with streaming to potentially 2 or 3 in the morning, Central Time Zone, is that I will not have any time at all to get the daily quests, and that means that we will just roll over fairly quickly here and not get all the daily quests done. Let's see. Let's just look at that. That was the last game we'll play. Yeah. So in theory, minimum, I would want to get 4 victories in about an hour. The odds of getting 4 victories in about an hour are fairly low. Let's cover a few more games, then we'll be done. These were some of the leftover games. We have a game here called Knife Quest, which looks like a platformer. It doesn't look terrible. It looks like it's maybe using some Terraria style art sprites, if not the actual art sprites from Terraria. You seem to throw a knife, and that seems to be your main weapon. I don't see enough here for a game, though. It's early access, 424, English only. Yeah, I think that's an easy one to skip. The problem with those kinds of games, even if they were amazing, they wouldn't get enough coverage or be relevant enough to play, and I've yet to ever hear of one actually being amazing. Next, we have a game on Steam here that's just a bunch of Asian characters. Looks like it is a RPG Maker style Chinese game, if I was to guess. Seems to jump between 4:3 ratio and 16:9 ratio for some reason. English is not supported. It's $9.99 and it's Chinese only. I will give it some credit and say that this does look like a better than average Chinese RPG game, but that's about all I can say about it. Next we have a game called Anime vs. Virus. It's another one of these low effort asset flip games with anime girls running around shooting things. Like, clearly somebody could be looking at these and saying, hey, these are low effort games, we don't need these on the storefront. They're $1.19, English and Russian. Yep, Russian troll games, basically low effort Russian games. At a certain point, the Russian troll games are just trolling Valve themselves and wasting their time more than anybody else. And if people are actually buying these games, it's because they're either really being silly or they're laundering money for some reason. Next, we have a game called Die Again on Steam that looks like it's a beat-em-up game at times and then a top-down game at times, and it looks asset flippy and very badly animated, and a lot of times it just seems like it's all over the place. It's early access, it's free, it's English only. I'm gonna say definitely no to that. We've got like four more games I want to get through. Here we have a game called Uldre Void, which looks like it's a medieval dungeon crawler. It's very pretty, but it's probably all just asset flips, if I was to guess. It's hard to tell if there's actually any gameplay here. It's early access, it's free, it has a third-party EULA, it's English only. Action RPG elements by a solo South African developer. So then do I bend over backwards and put this on the follow list because it's a solo South African developer? I have wanted to see more African developed games in general. Or do I just admit that this is just too much of an asset flip and it's just not going to work? It's single player only too, and it looks more like a multiplayer game. You know what, I'll put it on the following list and we'll see. I'll give it a chance. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Signs of the Sojourner, which looks like a card game, and I feel like I've seen this before. A card game with maybe some dialogue, and the card game itself seems to be kind of simplistic. Narrative card game about relationships and communication for $19.99, English only with a third-party EULA. It's got a lot going against it, but it is rated positively, so I'll put it on the follow list, but that is way too expensive. Third-party EULA is offensive, and it does have some SJW red flags here when you're making games about relationships and communication, which I would argue that video game programmers in particular probably not too good or knowledgeable about relationships and communication. They wouldn't be my first type of people to talk to, certainly about those topics. Next we have a game on Steam called Droughtcraft, which looks like it's some kind of asset flip factory builder game. It's early access, $8.99, English, single player. Yeah. It looks like you're running a beer factory, a brewery, which is a different idea. So if this concept was more polished and thought through, there might be something to that. But there's a little bit more art to brewing than there is science. There's a lot of science to it also. So it would be kind of weird to have a game where you try to run a brewery compared to running any other kind of factory. Next we have Deep Rock Galactic, which is overwhelmingly positive. I think it must have just come out of early access. It's $29.99, which is very expensive. And it's English full audio. Yeah, and is it a multiplayer game only? It says it has single player. 1 to 4 player co-op first person shooter featuring space dwarves. Okay. Well, I see why it's not on my fall list, though, because it's a heavy emphasis on multiplayer. It looks like a fine game. It looks okay to play, and clearly people who do play it like it, but it's just too multiplayer focused. And that brings me to the Humble Bundle, and I seriously doubt there will be any new Humble Bundles. Yeah. Let's see what the Humble Indie Bundle 21 says. It's still 11 hours until the next thing is revealed as being in the Humble Indie Bundle 21. So, yeah, we can't take anything from that. And then that will bring me back to my Twitter feed, which almost certainly will have barely anything new to say, because why would any news show up in the middle of the night on a Monday? Dark Souls series shipments and digital sales top 27 million. Dark Souls 3 tops 10 million. Well, some of the Gamatsu articles certainly would make sense coming out in the middle of the night, because, yeah, they're probably working in Japan, which would put the United States time zones 12 hours behind or ahead or whatever. But yeah, that's it. It was literally 2 tweets. That's all we had. Well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have